When do you need a GTIN exemption on Amazon? Most brands don't know what a GTIN exemption is or what type of situations actually make sense for getting one. It's important to know the details because once you build a listing on Amazon using a GTIN exemption, it's very hard to undo. If you later want real UPCs or you want those products in Walmart.com or in physical stores, you may have to start your listings over and lose all of the search rankings and reviews you've built over time. So before you click apply, let's look at when a GTIN exemption actually makes sense and when it quietly sets you up for expensive problems down the road. Coming up, you'll learn what a GTIN exemption actually is and the types of products and brands it does make sense for. When you should avoid a GTIN exemption because it can limit your ability to scale, sell in other marketplaces, or use regular UPC codes later. The real pros and cons of GTIN exemptions versus buying GS1 barcodes, including how each option affects listing setup, cost, compliance, and the long-term supply chain logistics. If you were to go into your kitchen and look at a random soda can, or any product with a UPC barcode on it, you can, by searching online for verified by GS1, put the barcode into the GS1 database. GS1 is the organization that tracks all the UPC codes in the world and who owns them. It will show you the brand that owns that particular UPC code. Most people have never done this, but that one simple scan shows you something important. UPC codes aren't just a random requirement Amazon made up, they're part of a global system that links every barcode to a specific business. Retail stores, distributors, Amazon, Walmart, they all rely on the same database to confirm what a product is and who it belongs to. Understanding that system and how it is going to affect your brand is the key to making sense of whether a GTIN exemption is a good fit or something you'll regret later. A UPC is a 12-digit barcode registered to each product. Amazon checks these against the official GS1 database to confirm it's real and registered to the correct brand. Amazon normally requires a UPC code in order to create a product listing on Amazon. A GTIN exemption is a process you can go through to get Amazon's permission to list a product without requiring a UPC, when you should not use a GTIN exemption. If your products already have manufacturer UPCs. If you already have UPC codes, you can't get a GTIN exemption, and you of course have no reason to get a GTIN exemption unless there was some kind of unusual circumstance with a portion of your SKUs, if you want to sell on Walmart or other marketplaces. GTIN exemptions can cause a lot of problems and extra cost if your brand is going to sell across multiple channels. Let's say you sell your product on Amazon, Walmart, your own website, maybe even small retail stores. If you use GS1 UPC barcodes and you have a standard supply chain, then your manufacturer prints the same universal UPC on every unit during the manufacturing process. This is usually basically free as it's just printed onto the packaging as part of the packaging design. Units are packed into cases or pallets. Often these might be cases of 10 or 24, for example. These are then shipped to your own warehouse and you can send those cases to any channel such as Amazon, physical stores, Walmart, and no one has to relabel and repack them until it's time to take one unit out and ship it directly to a customer. The same barcode stays on the product throughout the supply chain and works everywhere. But with a GTIN exemption, everything becomes more complicated. Your manufacturer produces your inventory with no barcode. When it arrives at your warehouse, the cases contain unmarked units. If you want to send some units to Amazon FBA, your team must open every case, pull out every unit, apply Amazon F&SKU labels individually, repack all units into the cases again, then ship and prep the boxes to Amazon. If you want to send some other units to Walmart, you must repeat the entire process, and you have to make sure the Amazon and Walmart barcodes never get mixed up, and that the different barcodes for all your other SKUs don't get mixed up with each other. So instead of one universal barcode, you now have platform-specific labeling, which means more labor and therefore higher cost, more lead time required if you want to replenish inventory somewhere. That's going to make staying in stock more difficult. It's just a matter of time until these barcodes get mixed up and put on the wrong product. When barcodes of different products get mixed up, and it does happen all the time, you often won't discover it until a bunch of customers suddenly start getting the wrong product. If you try to send them a replacement, Amazon just sends them the wrong product again. The only solution at that point is to close the listing down and send all the inventory back. Then after paying all those shipping fees, you've got to pay people to get it all straightened out, fix the barcodes without making further mistakes, and then pay to send the inventory in again. and you've been losing sales in the meantime, along with possibly getting negative reviews. However, if you are shipping FBM or fulfilled by merchant directly from your manufacturing facility and ship orders one at a time to each customer, this problem disappears. In that case, you don't need a barcode on the unit at all. You're not exchanging one barcode for multiple barcodes, you're substituting one barcode for no barcode. That's why GTIN exemptions only make sense in specific scenarios, and why most brands with a traditional supply chain aiming to scale across multiple channels should stick with universal GS1 UPCs. Going back to our reasons you would not want a GTIN exemption. If you ever want to switch to GS1 UPCs later, ASINs created with exemptions cannot later be converted to use UPCs. To switch later, you'd have to create new listings from scratch, which would mean losing any reviews you had earned and search rankings and sales history that you've built up over time. If you bought third-party UPC codes in the past. If you buy UPC codes in the past from a random third party that you are no longer in contact with, this may force you to choose between new UPCs or a GTIN exemption. Most of the time, getting new official UPCs registered under your brand name is the right solution. Private label sellers just getting started. Private label sellers should generally buy GS1 UPCs, not use exemptions, especially if they will eventually use FBA or fulfilled by Amazon, which is when you ship the inventory to Amazon's warehouses and Amazon ships out the individual orders to customers. If you want to sell in physical retail stores. Physical retail stores often require UPC codes. So if that's part of the plan at some point, you may want to use UPC codes now since switching later is so difficult. One comment about potential sales ranking problems. I noticed with Google AI overviews, it tells us that a GTIN exemption makes your products less visible on Amazon. However, if you look closely at the source articles, you'll notice that they don't actually say that. Instead, they point out the same downfalls of a GTIN exemption that I've said here, or they point out that going the route of listing the products as generic instead of under a brand name in order to get an automatic GTIN exemption hurts the search visibility. I totally agree about listing products as generic. That's not a good idea for many reasons. However, don't use UPC codes simply because you think it will help you rank better on Amazon searches, because I haven't seen anything to indicate that is true. When a GTIN exemption does make sense. Print on demand, custom, or handmade products. With these products, typically there's very high amounts of variations, and you're usually shipping all these orders directly to customers from the place they are made. In these situations, using a GTIN exemption is great because you don't have to worry about putting a barcode on the products before sending them to customers. Clothing and apparel with large variation counts. These often have thousands of variations, which make the cost of UPCs quite high. Most clothing doesn't use UPCs, so GTIN exemptions are pretty standard for these. If you did use UPCs, you'd have to have a UPC code for each size within each design. Mechanical parts are similarly complex catalogs. Same situation as the others. UPC codes are often not used for these, and a GTIN exemption is going to be great, particularly if you're not using FBA. GTIN exemption benefits. It's free, relatively fast approval, usually 2 to 3 business days. It's ideal for large or rapidly changing catalogs, particularly when you're shipping orders from the exact location the products are manufactured directly to customers. GTIN exemption drawbacks. Listings created under a GTIN exemption without a UPC can't be converted to use UPCs later. You'd need a brand new listing. A GTIN exemption creates platform-specific barcodes such as Amazon FN SKUs. This makes packaging, labeling, and inventory management much more complex across marketplaces. One of the major factors to determine whether a GTIN exemption makes sense is whether or not you'll be using FBA or FBM. That, however, is an important decision, and there are some major factors to consider that most brands are unaware of. Check out my video on FBA versus FBM to help make that decision. Otherwise, the next big decision you'll face is whether to enroll in Amazon's brand registry program. In the next video, I'll walk you through the key benefits, limitations, and requirements of brand registry so that you can make an informed decision. That's another decision I found a lot of brands choose incorrectly the first time. Click here to watch that video now.